Update at 11. I am Muslima Sholibo. The First Lady, Aisha Muhammad Buhari, has admonished Muslim faithfuls to do only that which pleases the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be on him, in order to earn Allah's pleasure. This was at a special prayer for the nation at the State House, Abuja.
Challenges like corruption, drug abuse among women and young people. With the consent of Mr. President, I decided to come up with a presidential task force on drug abuse. We decided to come up with a task force. Since our Chief of Staff is here, he will help us to push it, to hasten the inauguration of the task force.
Each and every one of us, not just continue to say Buhari, we should act Buhari by also not being corrupt. May Almighty Allah continue to be with us and guide us and continue to make us model for the righteous.
The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, has emphasized its determination to reduce the level of substandard and falsified medicines to the barest minimum in the country through effective collaboration with relevant stakeholders. The Director General NAFDAC, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, while x-raying the achievements and challenges of the agency in the past 2 years, also spoke of the prospect of the agency in Nigeria.
Looking back, I can say with confidence that our goal to curb the menace of substandard falsified medicines has become crispier than ever. One of our strategic plans is to reduce substandard falsified medicines to not more than 5% prevalence in Nigeria by the year 2025.
In the meantime, member countries of the Trans-Sahara Roads Liaison Committee in Abuja for the 70th session of the committee to share ideas towards addressing some developmental issues and financing the Trans-African Highway Plan, which seeks to connect the whole of Africa. Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, disclosed that a total of 9 highways are meant to achieve the connectivity, out of which 3 highways pass through the Nigerian territory.
The third, and the one about which we are gathered today, is the Lagos-Algiers Highway. Now, it is important to contextualize that this is part of what we all read about as the Trans-Saharan trade route. This was the road of camels and horses. So how much Africa has progressed now is that with the partnership of all of the men sitting here and all of the experts, 80% of the road that used to be traveled by camels and horses, footpaths, is now motorable.
The Trans-Sahara Road, being a major economic route in Nigeria, will continue to receive the desired attention so that it will facilitate not only economic activity, but also regional and continental integration.
It is more than desirable that we can conceive together a vision, concerted, harmonious, and integrated economic development to maximize our potential.
The committee, which is made up of 6 countries, including Mali, Algeria, Tunisia, Niger, Chad, and Nigeria, was formed in 1966 to encourage road networks, socio-economic activities, development cooperation, and trade within member countries. That concludes the news update at the hour. Please join us at 1 for another one. Have a very good morning and a good day ahead.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Welcome to the program. On the program today, we'll have a full blast. But let me start with Lizzie Omoroye. What are we expecting on your segment?
Well, on the media review segment of the program, we shall be taking a look at the Ajaokuta Steel Mill, which has been in existence since 1979. And of course, Mr. President recently signed an agreement with the Russian government at the just concluded Russia-Africa Summit. Now, the question is, should we be weary of this agreement? Should we embrace it? What does this portend for the African economy and the Nigerian economy? And of course, my guest will be taking a look also at the role of the media in pursuance of this agreement.
But most times you ask if the media, as an agenda setter, is not able to activate an insight from a depth of knowledge of the nitty-gritty of all this, the public will not get to know.
That's because there has to be an understanding of what the issue is all about.
So what are we going to get regarding the media visibility so far on it?
So right on the segment, he's going to be telling us what the mill industry actually entails for a layman that will be listening on the program. What does it entail? What is the function of that mill? How will this mill contribute to the gross domestic product of the economy? That's what we'll be taking a look at.
Okay. And on discussion segment on Insight today, for a couple of weeks now, we'll be looking at the economy. Just weeks back, we did something on the impact of border closure on the economy, reorientating the minds of Nigerians on consuming made-in-Nigerian products, where we really have a change of mindset regarding foreign goods as against consuming Nigerian products. During that program, we looked at quality and why Nigerians would not want to have that, and a huge avalanche of benefits of consuming Nigerian products. Today on the program, we are looking at the takeaways from Mr. President's recent visits to Saudi Arabia, where he attended the Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh. That's the package on Insight, as we said. Up next on the program is the discussion segment. Don't go away. Shortly after Mr. President's visit to Russia, where he attended the Russia-Africa Summit, he jetted off to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for the Future Investment Initiative in that flank. It raised a lot of dust and engaged a lot of public conversations. Some said his journeys are getting too much. But if the president does not travel, how will things get done? Some say the investments, the journeys are within the template of whatever he's supposed to do to drive home the next level agenda of his administration. So our focus on this segment will be on Mr. President's visit to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, where some of the key things he did there had to do with trying to push home and sell the implementation of key reforms by his administration in the oil and gas sector mostly, and other concerns in the area of agriculture. While they had a meeting with the largest oil operating company, Aramco, chaired by a Saudi Arabian, and a few other things while in Riyadh. So what are the takeaways from that visit to Riyadh, where he attended the Future Investment Initiative there, and why would people say his journeys are getting too much? My guests, I have Susan Henshaw. Susan Henshaw is a lawyer and also a non-profit professional. Thanks for joining us on Insight.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And Chukwudi Enekwechi is a journalist. I call him a veteran for that matter, and in the practice we call veterans elders. It's good to have you on Insight.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Well, even within families, the father is always up and about. And these days, the mother would want to also be up and about to keep the family moving, mostly for the future of the children. Why would people say that Mr. President's journeys lately are getting too much and more or less they're a waste?
Well, I guess just because the people would have something to say, you know, understandably. But you'd recall that his traveling too much has been going on even from the first or second visit. So I'm not going to put too much, you know, on that, what people are saying. You know, I mean, where we should base our should I say, what we should actually worry about is what's the purpose for the trips and how much or what are the benefits, of the trip. I think that's what we should concern ourselves with, and that's what, Nigerians really need to know. Now, in realistically speaking, where we are now, where the economy is at, and with all the problems we have, the security, all the deficits we have, say, in infrastructure, what's he sitting home doing? The things a president can delegate, depending on how important they are, of course, and the things he must do himself. Now, like I said, in line with our present realities, I think it's a wise decision on his part to go out, and meet other world leaders. As a matter of fact, like people usually say, when big things are happening, if you're not on the table, you're the menu. You're on the menu. So a lot has come out of the president's trips. I usually always try to say on what are the risks and benefits. The benefits far and substantially outweigh the risks of him traveling. And I personally hope that in the next 3 years before the end of his term, he would perhaps do more traveling. The president himself said in his visit to Saudi Arabia, he said that any nations that can help Nigeria meet its infrastructural needs, he's willing and ready to work with them. That's why you'd notice that for a lot of times when he travels, like when he went to Sochi, before he went, to Saudi Arabia, if you really look at, what went on in both of those countries, you might think, there are overlaps. But those are intentional overlaps, We've been there before to where MOUs were signed and all kinds of, arrangements were made, and some of them fell through, So when you look at his visit to Saudi Arabia, I think one of the things that kind of got me on a personal level was how intimate that entire visit was.
Okay.
It was phenomenally intimate. Over and above, let's say what he asked for. I think one of the things that struck me the most was Saudi Arabia said to him, "What can we do for you?" And that was reiterated again, when the crown prince, his father, the king, had asked, the president, "What can we do for you?" And that really struck me on a very personal level because it doesn't get any more intimate than that, And let me tell a short story. Hopefully this is, true. We have enough fake news pundits out there. I don't want to be one of them. But I heard, from a very reliable source that when the president was a minister for petroleum back in the day, that the king was also the minister for petroleum, in Saudi Arabia. So he knows this president on a very personal level, That's something, So in this context, you can't beat relationships.
Sure.
There's business, there's relationships, and in modern day, if you're not out there networking, you're not getting nothing. You're not getting anything. So I think it's a great thing that the president went. Honestly, I really think so.
Okay, yeah. I'll come back to you for specifics.
Absolutely.
Let me go to Chukwudi Nekwechi. Susan says so many things to take away from the visit to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Can we engage some of them?
Well, first of all, contrary to the opinion of some people that the visits are actually becoming too much, I believe that these visits are deliberately planned.
Foreign trips.
The foreign trips.
Let's be specific.
The foreign trips are deliberately planned in order to achieve set objectives. And those set objectives, in the long run, will benefit generality of Nigerians.
Absolutely.
And in this particular trip that the president went to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, you will recall that it was an opportunity for him to meet with the Saudi leadership. Apart from the president of Nigeria, the president of Kenya was also in Saudi seeking for some opportunities for his country as well. The president of Niger was equally there, seeking for some good opportunities for his country. But above all, the United States was also at the same summit, and the president was able to extract some developmental commitments from the United States, one of which is that the U.S. has a $60 billion investment fund for developing countries. And there was a promise that Nigeria will benefit from that. You can imagine how humongous, how huge that kind of support will be like. Saudi Arabia has invested about $40 billion in India recently, invested $10 billion in Pakistan, invested $20 billion in Indonesia. And the president was able to extract commitment that they can do similar thing in Nigeria. And how would they be able to do that? It's only when the president is out there promoting his reforms, telling the world that Nigeria is opening up, Nigeria is ready for foreign direct investments to come in. So if he didn't travel, how would he get this kind of commitments? Yeah. Besides that, the Saudi Aramco management met with the president, and he also extracted commitment that they will make available their technological knowledge to Nigeria. They will make it available, especially for NNPC, especially for revival of our refineries, especially for the pipelines, to ensure that we have seamless flow of petroleum products. This technology, you don't get it easily from elsewhere. But now we have this expertise coming from Saudi Arabia. Aramco, as you know, is the largest oil company in the world. So we can see that there are empirical evidence, verifiable facts as to the achievements of these foreign trips. They are not just in vain.
But some of the critics are saying, yes, good commitments, good offers by all these countries, including Riyadh and Saudi Arabia. Is it that they are giving with the right and taking with the left? Are there strings attached?
Well, in any bilateral relationship, even multilateral relationship, there is what they call give and take.
Absolutely.
There's always a balance that you must strike in bringing about investments to your country. There are some things they must gain. But when they invest in Nigeria, for instance, Nigeria is a huge market. They will be able to reap the benefits of their investment. So it's not as if they are giving you free food. There's no free lunch anywhere. But what we are saying is that the government of President Muhammadu Buhari has the capacity to bring in these investors who were not coming in the past. Right. That is what the difference. The difference is that they are now coming in with their money. When their money comes in here, it stimulates your own economy. That's the implication.
Right.
Okay. Susan, part of the visit was the fact that we had on his entourage, the president delegation, the Minister of Petroleum Resources, State, Industrial Trade and Investment, and the GMD NNPC to expedite action on modalities for the collaboration of the leaders regarding the oil and gas sector. He has touched on it briefly. Bigger picture, he has given the immediate. Let's look at the bigger picture. Well, what does it look like? Huge, promising?
That picture is extremely huge. Let me give you a little background. You see, Saudi Aramco, like he said, is the biggest, oil company out there in the world, really, and I think I heard recently their net worth is about 2 trillion or somewhere above there,
Is it 2 trillion naira, dollars, or what?
Oh, USD, $2 trillion. They're bigger than, Microsoft and, whatever put together. But anyway, now that's, having said that, they've come and asked us
what they can do for us. We've invited them over. You know, the president said, come and do an analysis, you know, as per how we can overhaul our, you know, oil and gas systems and all that. And here's something, you know, that's really important to know. Saudi Arabia, you know, there's a, I think it's called a private investment fund, or, you know, which I suspect is a conglomerate of businesses. And these people are capable of investing about $5 billion within a couple of months, you know? And you know, when you're talking money, sometimes things drag on, you know, but they're ready to fly in 2 months. So the potential of us having them invest at least $5 billion in a couple of months is as good as, you know, anything else, you know? And let me go also over to, other than oil and gas and, you know, coming to help us do the analysis and overhauls and all that. Let me move also into another really pertinent thing, which is security. Yeah, you know. Now, when the president went to Sochi, that's part of the things they talked about, you know, how to help us, you know, and all that. But also in Saudi Arabia, understand that this investment in oil and gas also kind of covers protecting our facilities, you know, and recommending what's best. A total overhaul, like I said, you know, total analysis of what's needed and so on. And just gives me the impression that brings us up really to the standard of the best oil company in the world. I mean, with their hands in there, that's where we're headed, you know? And so, doubts and all that, but that's the reality, you know? Now, will they come through? You know, will all this come through? Because, you know, there's genuine concerns. There are genuine concerns out there by Nigerians. Let us take the Jakarta steel mill, for example. Russia had come prior, signed docs and all that. Nigeria invested $5 billion. Nothing came of it, you know? So it does happen that all these arrangements get made, you know, and there's no follow-through. But why would this, you know, visit to Saudi Arabia be different? Now, pardon me, but I think it would be different because we know this president doesn't renege, you know? We know this president is going to make sure that any documents that are signed, all the legalities are going to be on the up and up and are not going to be another PNID, you know? We know that he took, for this trip to Saudi Arabia, you know, like you said, he took the GMD of NNPC, he took, you know,
Petroleum,
and yeah, so you can see, you know, I mean, there's no other way of being able to know how serious an event is than looking at, you know, the steps and the follow-up and who are involved and all that. So I'm really, you know, I think positive things are going to come out of this. Huge, big positive things.
Okay,
you know?
let me leave the next question open. Russia-Africa summit. It ignited a lot of fresh breath regarding the Ajaokuta Steel Company. And the emphasis of this time is going to be a government-government collaboration.
Absolutely.
Not government-government company collaboration.
Right.
So let me engage the two of you. Where will we look at, where do we see Ajaokuta if all the nitty-gritties are concluded, maybe in the next 3 years?
Well, I would say that...
given all the economic components, employment components, and raw material components, name it.
Again, I want to note that with the president's visit to Sochi in Russia, and then discussions about Ajaokuta, we can confidently say that is the closest we are coming to surrounding Ajaokuta. Now, the Russian government has actually pledged to resolve it along with Nigeria on government-to-government basis, as you noted. And that is the best option.
Absolutely.
Because the technology came from there, so they know the secrets behind reviving Ajaokuta. So I believe that when the paperwork are done, the meetings are being held, now it's for the technocrats to do the paperwork. When the paperwork are completed, you will actually see Ajaokuta being revived. And we're already hearing from the Minister of Mines and Minister of Mines that Ajaokuta will take off sooner or later. In fact, I believe in the next 1 year, Ajaokuta will be revving again into life. So, you see, the second law of thermodynamics says that an isolated organization, in this case a nation, or even an individual, cannot remain where it used to be. You must exchange ideas, go out there and exchange ideas and seek for more knowledge. And that is what the administration is doing. That was what Huawei in China did in order to become what we have today as a global telecommunication outfit. Huawei in China. You know, you have to exchange ideas with the outside world. And for the president to be traveling, you can't just isolate yourself. Even in politics, you can't isolate yourself. You must be able to engage, continuously engage, and find solutions to the peculiar needs of your own country. And this is the way solutions can actually be found.
Okay.
No, I wanted to just piggyback a little bit.
An open question to the two of you.
Yeah, you know, on what Chukudi had said. Now, you remember that the president had promised that, in one of his campaign promises, he had said that the Ajaokuta steel mill was going to be revived. Now, if he didn't travel, how would that have come to, fruition? The fact that he was able to travel, go to Russia and seal that deal, it's evidence in itself that it's good to get out, But that's not all. He had also said, recently that the plan for this government is to put 100 million, people to work within a 10-year span, in the next 10 years. Okay. So when you really look at all of that, you see how all those things tie in? Employment, with all those things that are coming in from his travels, They're not just isolated gains, they all are interconnected, interwoven, All of the Ajaokuta steel mill. There's also a smelting company in Akwa Ibom State.
Ikorabasi.
In Ikorabasi, yeah. Which the Russians are also coming to look into and revive. All of that is going to provide employment, So when I really, look at all of these things, they're huge in the gains. The gains are without a doubt,
Let me add that. Let me add by saying that the difference between President Muhammad Buhari at this time and the other past administrations is that a lot of politics went into what's happened in the past. Right. There was a lot of bureaucratic bottlenecks that they couldn't actually untie. But now you have a president who is determined to ensure that things are actually working. Even, you can find an example in the railway sector. Nigerian railway sector, within the last 4 years of his administration, is already working. That's a practical example. And I think he wants to replicate this example in all the other sectors, so that by the time he completes his 8 years in office, Nigeria would have been, the proper foundation would have been laid for Nigeria's industrial growth.
Okay, talking about the rail sector, a lot of other reasoning was that, but there has been some kind of arrangement with the Chinese government over the Lagos-Calabar end of the tracks. How come it has only moved to Russia?
Right. Like I started saying, even I kind of, when I was reading...
Will it speed it up? Will it cause some overlaps?
Yeah. I was kind of looking at it and said, there seems like overlaps here.
Okay.
But the truth about it is, and I'm speaking really extemporaneously, so hopefully I'm right. The truth about it is that when you sign an MOU, that's not really a contract per se,
And I think that the government has weighed its options and seen that Russia is probably a better
to handle that side of it.
To handle that side of it. And also, I recall also that the 8th Senate, or the 8th NAS, had extracted that whole project out of, the budget at the time, So in my mind, that almost seemed like it fell through. This visit to Russia is really, honestly, way bigger than the individual projects. It's also a renewal of Nigeria's relationship with Russia, which if you really want to look back, since 2018, we've done at least up to our business or dealings with Russia has increased, exponentially, to almost by about 90, almost a little under 100%, So we're doing good business with Russia. This is a new push, to solidify that, relationship. Now, let me, I'm a student of history, so I also like to go back a little bit. Now, you see, Russia, when it was the USSR, it helped African countries a lot, advocacy, struggles for independence and so on. Russia was hugely involved with all of that. So it's a good history, all in all, and we're looking forward to, there's a whole lot more, perhaps, when we can get into that, about what more Russia's coming in here to do. Right.
I was just going to support what she was saying in the area that, incidentally, the railway sector is the most successful legacy so far by this present administration. The railway sector, this president will go down in history as the president that revived Nigeria railway sector. The Ministry of Transport, the Nigerian Railway Corporation, they are very focused. They are delivering on the agenda of Mr. President for the next level for Nigerians. And I believe that whatever they are doing is deliberate in order to satisfy the aspirations of Nigerians. They are doing very good work. It doesn't, for instance, it doesn't really matter which country handles which portion of the project. But the important thing is that at the end of the day, Nigerians are the ultimate beneficiaries. So I want to give kudos to the Minister Rotimi Amechi, the Minister of Transportation, and his team, the Nigerian Railway Corporation, and of course, ultimately, the Mr. President, for actually bringing this about, for making Nigerians once more feel that transportation should actually be seamless.
Absolutely.
That was not the situation in the recent past.
Before we come back to our primary concern here, let's speak to the extension of the border closure, because we started seeing the dividends coming in, the surpluses in petroleum availability, the local production being boosted up.
Right.
And now there's another leg to it, the extension of the closure.
Well, I think that the extension of the closure just speaks to how successful the closure was, in terms of security. Let me just, take a little time on that. If you've noticed that since the borders were closed, we've had less incidences of attacks on the military, we've had less incidences of attacks in the bordering towns, and so on. So the issue of security alone is even enough. The issue of the border and the extension, honestly, that's another, what do I call it now? That's another strike in the right direction, And I like more especially that they're doing it incrementally. If need be for an extension after January, I hope the president reminded to extend it again, until we have a hang of, what we can do and what we can do. And the public needs to know that those border towns or those borders being shut does not mean we've isolated ourselves. The ports are open, People usually go through those borders to smuggle so that they don't have to pay any duties on those. So if they still want to bring in things, then let them go to the ports and bring them in through the ports, pay their taxes or whatever, and stick with
you know, the products that are allowable to coming, you know, instead of, you know, sneaking in any old thing. So I think it's a good thing, you know.
Okay, Chukwudi.
I think it's a good thing.
Well,
yeah.
She's entitled to her opinion.
I knew
But I would say that I would say that as an individual, I expect periodic review of the closure of the borders by the federal government.
Yeah.
Because this has to do with economy. And the economy has to do with exchange of goods and services. I'm not advocating for illegal exchange of goods and services. I'm advocating for legal.
Are you speaking from your journalistic point of view? Or,
from which point of view?
Your journalistic point of view. For the people?
I'm speaking from, as an individual. Okay. Now, I'm coming to land.
Okay.
So what I think is that the economic team that was recently set up, it should be their responsibility to actually look into the issues that have been discussed and be able to advise them, because it's an economic issue. Right. It's an economic issue, and then they should be able to advise the president. They are the ones to look at the pros and cons of the closure and advise the president appropriately. And once they are able to do that, I believe that the president should accede to their advice. But I'm not in a position, I'm not an expert on this, but I believe that there's a team already set up, the economic team, in which a lot of eminent Nigerians are members. And this is the kind of thing, this is the kind of issue they should dwell on immediately and come up with solution and advice from Mr. President.
Okay, let's also look at smuggling, because give and take, all the moves by Mr. President, is smuggling is not nipped in the bud, like we are doing, because the issue of border closures has put a check on that, but you still have Nigerians who are doing everything humanly possible. A couple of days ago, in one of our news bulletins, or reports that came in from Niger-Kogi axis of the custom commands, we saw full-length trailers loaded with foreign rice, and even not for the eagle eye of the Kogi Niger command of the customs, it would have passed for petroleum products into the country. And what happens? Arriving in Nigeria, that becomes a threat to the local rice production. Right. So what do we say about smuggling?
Yeah, smuggling is...
praise them that they are hustlers or what?
You know, let me say this. You know, there are a lot of people that have said, oh, you know, we're still under production in rice. We're not producing as much as, you know, we need, you know, for our own consumption, and that until we get there, you know, at least they should allow rice coming. You know, but here's the thing. We're a very peculiar nation. I'm sure I've said that so many times, you know, on your show. We're a very peculiar nation. We're very, honestly, very indisciplined lot, myself included, just so that I don't get people, you know, getting back at me and who does she think she is. But yeah, we're a very indisciplined lot, you know. Things that you would normally work, like the incremental, you know, or allowing in a little bit, doesn't work with us because everybody thinks about just making money. You know, that's all they care about. They don't care about the country. They don't care about how it affects the local production here. And somebody was saying that he usually, you know, a rice grower, you know, that he was selling, was it, I can't remember how many bags of rice, you know, but that in the short while the borders have been closed, that he has been able to sell two truckloads or two, you know, whatever loads of rice, of his rice, you know. And so bringing in this rice, it floods the market. Where's all that foreign exchange going? Out of the country, you know. What's happening to our local rice here? And then people start this very superficial, I don't know, need or preference. Oh, it's local rice. Oh, it's imported rice. And I've been here since January. All I've eaten is rice produced in this country. You couldn't tell. You really could not, you know, tell what I was sold, bought also. And here's how you know that for sure the quality of what's being produced here is great. We don't need any smuggling. If we're under, if we're producing less than we consume, then let's produce more. That's where the incentive comes from, you know. We don't need people to be smuggling in. You know, it's a lose-lose for us, period, you know. I heard Benin Republic, one of the biggest importers of rice, they don't eat long grain, parboiled. So where do you think all that is going? You know, it's coming here. So let them go figure out how to do their thing. We're not playing that anymore.
What should Nigerians do to support government towards this issue of smuggling? As a people,
Well, as a people, Nigerians ought to appreciate the decision of the federal government to control the borders, because I call it control. What we had was a situation where every border town was available for all manner of things to come in. But now there's a substantial control going on, which a lot of people describe as border closure. Nigerian borders, as we all know, have always been porous. But now with this measure, perhaps a lot of other practical measures will be put in place for government to effectively control or monitor our borders. Right. Perhaps they're using this opportunity to put those measures in place, but government will never tell you. Yeah. So I think the best we as a people can do as citizens is to give government the needed support, the needed applause on what they are doing, and don't use the opportunity to actually criticize government without any objective.
In all this is to jack up Nigeria's economy and make it that egalitarian society we have all been talking about. In all this is to place Nigeria at the threshold of global competitiveness, which has more or less been modified into what they call the multilateralism.
Right.
And if somewhere, somehow we get there and we stabilize, who benefits?
We all do.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, we all do. We all benefit,
okay.
You know. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit because this is really important. When we're talking about these borders and so on, let us remember that one of the biggest things is not actually flooding us with rice. It's keeping us safe, you know. It's keeping us safe from all manner of people, especially ISWAP, you know, which is, you know, the West African ISIS branch of ISIS. So you have these people sneaking in and out, you know, causing mayhem, attacking villages, attacking military and so on, you know. And so, like I said, all these things are kind of, the benefits are all tied in, you know. Who benefits? We do. Ultimately, we do, you know. What's the likelihood that, you know, I mean, I'll eat foreign rice if part of the benefit of that was that, you know, kids at the front are not killed by this lunatics, ISWAP people, you know. But the shutting down of the border, the benefits, you know what, I really cannot emphasize enough, you know. I can't emphasize enough the president's travel, his closing of the border, those two things alone. You know, the benefits are astronomical, you know.
Let me allow Chukwu to give us his last words.
Yeah.
Well, I want to also derive my perspective from what she just said, that ISIS poses a very dangerous challenge to the Sahel region, and of which the Lake Chad can be considered as part of, and the northern part of the country. Therefore, all measures, all efforts, all hands must be on deck to ensure that the security of the country is guaranteed. And I think that's what the president is doing.
I believe we have tried the very much we can to cover mileage within the space we discussed. Susan Henshaw, lawyer, not professional. Thanks for being on Insight today.
I appreciate it.
And don't rest, we'll always come to you to come and give us a lot of thoughts. And Chukwudi Enekwechi, journalist, it was nice having you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Don't give up. It's just a matter of time. Nigeria's economy will just be there and will be at par and be on the global threshold of being at par with those countries we hear, the Chinas of the world, the Indians of the world, name it. Up next on India Inside is the media review segment. Stay with us.
steelworks have been described as Nigeria's bedrock of industrialization. The question is, has the Ajaokuta steel mill been able to surmount its challenges and contribute effectively to the socio-economic development? And with the recent signing between Nigeria and Russia, will the steel mill be revived? My guest, Mr. Mir Ogidi, a mines and steel correspondent with the NTA, will provide answers. It's nice to have you in our studio.
Thank you for having me.
All right, quickly, let's just take a look into the activities of the mining sector.
The activities of the mining sector before 2015 has been that of artisanal miners trying to dominate the industry.
Okay.
We don't have large-scale miners who are supposed to contribute to the GDP of the economy. It's below 1% right now, the GDP from the mines and steel industry. But when the present administration came on board, 30 billion naira was issued to the Ministry of Mines and Steel as an intervention fund to encourage those that are interested in the sector. And the Bank of Industry, in collaboration with the Ministry of Mines and Steel, also generated about 5 billion naira to support artisanal miners. So for now, I think it's trying to pick up. The target is to get 3% contribution to the GDP by the year 2025.
3%?
Yeah.
Is that not little? Is that not low?
We have to start from somewhere. We are coming from 0.03% right now.
Okay.
0.03%, that is what Mines and Steel is contributing.
Okay.
But now they are trying to target 3% to the GDP.
To the GDP. All right, now that steel mill has been there for over 40 years, if not more than. But really, with this signing that has happened, what does this portend for the industry and Nigeria?
The story of Ajaokuta Steel Company is a story of lamentation, some sort of.
Okay.
It's not a good commentary because I've been there for 3 times with ministers. We are talking of a steel mill that is occupying 24,000 acres of land with 24 estates, with medical facilities, 66 kilometers of road crisscrossing, and has the capacity to generate 110 megawatts. And it has 43 plants, different plants, and 40 of them are already completed. I mean, installation of equipment, all completed. But 40 years after, from 1979 to date, we are still talking of how to revive that kind of bedrock of the nation's industrialization. We have the raw materials around there. We have a tank, even railway. We have railway to that extent, to the mill. But due to some factors that can be attributable to international politics, lack of political will, and some court litigations, we are still talking of how this place can take off 40 years after. So it's really a sad commentary. But with the coming on board of the present administration, the Russia government are the original. They started the project in 1979, a company called TPE. They started the project, but because of payment issues, they left.
Okay.
But I think they are trying to overcome some of those challenges. For instance, in 2004, former President Olusegun Obasanjo concessioned the company to an Indian company called Ispat. But 4 years after, not even one road was produced.
Not even one?
4 years after, that is 2004 to 2008, nothing was produced. That was a clear demonstration of lack of capacity on the part of the company to actualize the dreams of the Ajaokuta Steel Company.
Okay.
So in 2016, the government decided to concession that facility, that Ajaokuta Steel Company, through the Ministry of Mines and Steel, when President Governor of Ekiti State tried to concession it, not completely selling it off, but concession. But that was when the Ministry and the National Assembly, precisely the House of Reps, they had some face-off, because the National Assembly stood its ground that they will never concession that.
Okay. I'm sorry to cut you there. The issue of concessioning, it has to come up now with this signing. And there have been different reactions from different quarters about this. What will happen to concessioning now?
The government has made a statement, position very clear, that the Ajaokuta Steel Mill will never be concessioned.
Why?
Because government is talking of giving employment to 100 million Nigerians.
100 million
Nigerians.
Okay.
And Ajaokuta has the capacity. It has 3 phases. We have phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 is to generate 1.3 million metric tons of steel, and that will bring employment of 10,000 youths. Direct jobs, 10,000, and indirect jobs, 500,000. Second phase will increase production to 2.6 million metric tons annually. And then the third phase, 5 million. And Nigeria is currently importing 5 million metric tons of steel
daily?
Every year.
Every year.
That is about $3.5 billion. This is money that is leaving the shores of Nigeria. So if this facility is become operational, you know the amount of money that will be within Nigeria instead of sending it out the shores of Nigeria.
Okay. Now, you talked about legal issues. Would you like to enlighten us about it?
Yes, in 2004, because of the failure of ISPAT to